ARG. Yes, I'm gonna make a little video to talk about my my workflow. Where is it? Yeah. Okay, so basically, a big motivating factor that drives like my philosophy towards my workflow is all about simplifying complexity. Because before the computer days, you only had the gear that you were able to afford, but these days we've got software and there's so much equipment, there's so many musical instruments and musical samples that we have access to, and it's a real detriment to being creative. I think we're at our most creative when our options are limited. I've always found it easier as well. Like when there's only a few colors on the palette, or there's only a few bits of um, musical elements that you can work with. It's a lot easier, and I find that doing remixes I've found easier for that reason in the past, because you've got these parts and you must use at least one of them, and so that just reduces the options you have, and then the size of your playground is smaller, and then there's less toys that you can pick up and use to create things. So I don't think our brains are powerful enough to consider like 50 different synthesizers and which one would be the best for the job in this song. So there's many ways you can go about that. And just a sidebar, by the way, all of my advice here today is for you to just take or leave. You can, and you should do that with YouTube people. You should try and, because everyone's wrong some of the time. So this is just my approach, and it's been refined over years and years, and it'll keep being iterated on beyond this. So just whatever you find resonates with you, take it. And if you think that Duncan's wrong about something, then you could be right. So anyway, my brain definitely can't deal with a plethora of stuff. You can go, further and further back down the chain of how sounds were made, and for example, I make my own kick drums, and you could keep going back down that chain. You could make the modules that make the kick drums. I could go, oh, I don't like this sine wave oscillator, I'm going to make my own. And then you could get out a fucking soldering kit, or you could get out JavaScript and start writing code. So there's a point where your proficiency, it has its limits, and you can always go back to school and learn. I put that in quotation marks. Go back to school, teach yourself more about how the thing was made. But right now you're getting started, and so there's nothing wrong with just going through Splice and finding kick drums and hi-hats or hi-hat loops that work together. And then maybe as you progress, you could make your own hi-hat loops and yada yada. So this here is what I work on most of the time, because the songwriting process can and should be really quick, I find. So I have my sounds organized, the sounds that I, when I'm sort of quote unquote going back to school and making the loops and the elements. And then if you think of it like a flow chart, it's like I create the sounds, and then I library, I catalog the sounds, and then when it's time to create, only finally then do I have all these books on the shelf, in other words, sound elements, parts of a song, to then just assemble really quickly and to change one with the other. It's akin to being a chef, and you've made these sauces and marinades and prepared all of these foods that take a lot of time. Sometimes, you can, smoke something for a couple of days, or you can age a piece of ham for many months, or cheese or something like that. But then when finally comes time to assemble it for the dinner that night, it's only a couple of hours work. And that's my approach. And so now I'm just going to quickly show you my template. Sidebar, you should create a template. It doesn't have to be mine, but you can always iterate as I've done. And just show you where it is. It's in File and Folder, Save Current Set as Default. Yeah. So you only get one. But yeah, this is essentially what my template looks like, bar this little red one, which is just so you can hear me. And I simplify my arrange or my song components into sort of three buckets. There's the kick and the bass. I call it low because I don't always use like a bass line typical of like a bass guitar. I'm using more these days like low drums, like toms, to fill in the in-between gaps of the kick drum. I would try and avoid having a kick and a low tom on the same beat, because there'll be too much bass and it will just cause, it'll sound shit. It'll distort, and if those two bass frequencies, if they're not on the same pitch or even slightly separate pitch, they can cancel each other out. If you've ever heard of phase cancellation and stuff like that. So it's really just nice to keep your bass out of the way of the kick, so they don't fight each other for space in the mix. And then next I have synths. So you see I have just a MIDI track here to get started, and I only am using two synthesizers at the moment. The one I showed you, Rapid and VCV, is my newfound love. I've been using other virtual modular synths for a while now. I've tried reactor blocks by Native Instruments. I've tried voltage modular. I've tried soft tube modular. And I just kept seeing VCV pop up. And so I thought I'd give it a try, even though it's not a plugin yet. But I've been messing around with it for the last few days, and I now see why I see it all over YouTube and everyone's using it. But that's beside the point. The next element is the percussion / sample section. And now I'll go into depth and tell you basically how I approach them. This last bit, split days into synthesis or audio, that's kind of the first stage in my like sound creating. So as you saw, the 3-stage process was like creating sounds and then cataloging them, and then the final is actually the creation of songs, which is quite quick. So I tend to do days where I focus on just synthesis, creating synthesizer sounds and then saving them. We're very lucky that we're in the digital age and we can just press Command S or save them somehow, and then they'll just be there. We don't have to fuck around with a different hardware synthesizer each time and know how to save patches there, and then maybe it's only got 128 memory capacity, and so if we have more sound, it's it's much easier on a computer. So I'll dig into a synth, and I with maybe just a kick drum or kicking a hi-hat in the background just for the rhythm reference, I'll just be jamming and patching and making like tweaks to the synthesizer until I come up with something that sounds really pretty. Or I'll spend days just on audio, and that's more boring for me and most people, I think, and it still needs to be done because I'm not a purist electronic person. I really like acoustic sounds with my electronic sounds, as you can guess. So the days spent on audio are just going through Splice, or a different one, which I'll show you now, that I like, and going through Spotify. And I'll record shit through Spotify using, there's a bunch of great little apps, but one I use is called Audio Hijack by a company called Rogue Amoeba. I'm using another one of their apps right now to record the audio from Ableton into the screen recording that I'm making. Yeah, good company. Right, so I'll show you what I use for each of these three buckets of song content, of what makes up a song for me. So the kick drum here you see is just a sample, but it's actually a sample that I've recorded myself from a patch that I made using voltage modular. Still like voltage modular. Good for the kicks and the percussive stuff, but VCV rack is definitely where I'm going to head in the future for all the other stuff, the melodics, arpeggiations, just the cool experimental stuff. And I will use that rapid synth as well for polyphonic stuff, because just like the name says, it's very rapid. It's very fast to get something going. But I find I can get really unique sounds out of VCV. So my kick came from, as you can see, of a lot of these folders in my Finder are now in my little browser here. And so I've got instruments. And I should point out there's a couple of ways to save sounds. You can save them within the plugin using its own preset manager, or you can save them in Ableton as like these files, these Ableton files. These are ADG files, which is basically an instrument container. Or there's these clip containers, which are ALC files. And I'll kind of go into those a bit more later. So I like using the ADG files because like I'll get all instruments all in one list. And as you see, the naming system that I use is the instrument type. Like, is it a bass? Is it a hi-hat? Is it an atmospheric? Is it a tom? Is it a percussive sound? Is it a lead sound? Is it a top, which is like a combination of hi-hats and other percussive elements? And then I give it the name, and then at the end, it's what kind of plugin was used. So if I was to just go bass, I get all my basses, not many of them because I'll tell you why later. But I can go, oh, well, I really like the sound of Zen, for example, and I want that in. So I'm going to listen to these two sounds and then work from there. But for this, yeah, so there's not many for a voltage kick through a voltage modulator because I've started saving presets. Oh, that's simpler. Shit. Yeah, I've started saving all my voltage presets within the plugin. So if I open up voltage modular, here's the blank patch, and I'll go to my presets in here. Kick. I think this is the kind of one I'm working with at the moment. Had some troubles with the patch library and voltage modular when they update. Some of the updates have ruined my patches, which I'm a bit dirty about. But you should be able to hear that that's just a sort of nice, deep, basic kick. And like I said, I bounced that into audio and then loaded it into a simpler, just to free up CPU space. As you can see, fuck, I'm already clocking a fair bit just from this patch. That's just voltage. Gosh, yeah. And I'll similarly, for the low elements, I'll probably also use modular a lot of the time. I've made some nice toms. I think I've saved the good toms. Might be in my instruments. Oh yeah, side point, how to save a preset within Ableton's containers is press Command G, and then we have what's called an instrument rack, and then you save that. And voltage, tom, boom, and there. Now it's in that big long list. And you have your own default Ableton. Might be in your documents folder, or I don't know where it is on PC, but where it has all these, and I've just stuck it to the default folder because when I hit that little save button, that's where it always wants to put it. Tom, yeah, I've deleted all my voltage instrument racks out of here, so that's a bit, you can hear this. I've got a bit too much white noise on that. I don't like, and it's sort of bit too much. You know, something like, you know, whatever. Or alternatively, I might use audio. I might find, like I'm about to get to show you in my loops folder, which I've also named things. Might find something that's some shit like that. And then there we go. So now I've got some sort of low end. I might filter out the little clicky claps that are coming. Now I've definitely got the low end. Don't always start with the low end, to be honest. I'm more trying to force myself to start with the sort of synth elements first, or the sampled elements. Right, so moving on to percussion sample. Yeah, mostly this comes from audio. I'll sometimes create my own percussions. You can use simpler. There is one synth that I use for percussions. It's called Attack. I've been looking for a drum synthesizer for a long time that really cuts it for me. Like I showed you, I do make them in voltage modular, but it's time consuming. I'm not good at it yet. But I did find this one, which is quite old actually, and it's basically just a synth voice with times 24 of them, and so it's infinitely sort of tweakable. If I just sort of get up its version of an 808 sounding sort of kit. So all these are identical, but it's just they've changed them, all the settings, to make it sound like these different kind of drums. So I've been using this to make hi-hats and to have them, you know, go from short to long. You can do that with a sample as well. If you've got a long hi-hat, if you just really shorten the decay, it'll sound like a closed hi-hat. The reason why I like using synth drums is because of the variation. When you just hear the same sample repeated again and again, that might be right for a kick drum, but for hi-hats, it can sound really robotic. If you're sampling your hi-hats, there are little tricks to make them sound human. You know, there's humanizing sort of techniques where you can impart some randomness on that sample by the volume changing slightly, the filter cutoff, if you've got a high pass or band pass or even low pass, just slightly changing randomly with each hit. look up some ways online to do that, because it's very quick to get a good kind of like groove if you're wanting to program your own percussive grooves. But yeah, synth isn't really the main source where I go for my percussion stuff for my taste. More it's the sort of sample routes, and I've got a bunch of, you've probably got these too, this folders in Dropbox, which is just a bunch of loops I've been collecting over a while. I'm not sure about how I am going to categorize this at the moment. That's still a question up in the air, but for now I have been sort of raiding Splice and downloading lots of elements and then using a little app to batch rename them with percussion or whatever at the start. It's a bit fiddly to keep it all. I know that Splice, if you just keep everything in the Splice app, like your samples will be searchable in here. How do you there's some way you can like search via tags in Splice. All downloads. Oh yeah. Yeah, so we could go one shot. So if you want to use Splice as your sample library, by all means, I think that's pretty wise. I know Don does it. And then the tags and everything are in there, and then you just sort of dragging it across. I've chosen to go this route and sort of avoid Splice. Fuck, I don't know why, but yeah, I've got these, and you know, I'll just literally just drag and copy paste, and then maybe I'll start sort of like going, oh, this, I only really like that bit, so I'll copy that, I'll consolidate it, and then I'm like, cool, yeah, I didn't want that super funky rhythm, I just wanted something a bit straight, and then, okay, I need some higher elements, so I'll search for Shake. Cool, I got a groove going, you know, like, yeah, that's really it. It's a lot of just taking these elements and making sure that they're not clashing and sort of stripping out the junk from the loop. I find a lot of loops are just like, especially like, I'll show you these percussion things that I download. They had like a nice sound to them. These ones, you can hear that. It's just sort of too busy. There's too many elements going on for my taste, you know, like I really just kind of want it. That one's not too bad, but you know, it's like I've got so moving on, the synths, like I told you, I'm using just Rapid and VCV at the moment. I've got other synths, I've bought tons over the years. I've currently got installed quite a lot still, but I don't need, you know, there's like one synth is, you know, has infinite sounds in it. So that's the fun of synthesis, is that you're not really committed to anything. Everything is variable. You know, I was using the what was it called? The OBX for a little bit. Arturia's new recreation of the old like 70s classic Oberheim synth. And yeah, the virtual analog stuff, like also the Legend, which is a mini Moog. You know, it has a great sound. Oh, shit, fucking. you know, it's a pre-patched synth. You know, there's not a lot of things when I want to get kind of weird that I can change in here. 3 oscillators, a filter, and a couple of envelopes, and not really anything. Like, I can't modulate the pitch of this oscillator with the speed of this oscillator, for example. You know, some basic frequency modulation. Or you can do this with oscillator 3. If I turn up, there we go. Oscillator 3 is modulating. Oh, it's on the filter. I want it on the off. Anyway, yeah, it doesn't fucking do much. So I find Rapid a really compelling synth because it sort of really has every kind of synthesis I'd want under the sun and a lot of modulation capabilities. Then the VCV and those kind of virtual actual modular synths are just awesome fun to play around with, but really time consuming because they're not pre-patched. You know, you want to get just a simple sound baseline going. It's like, well, you need to put the oscillator in there, and then you need to connect it to the filter, and then you need to get the filter to an amplifier, and then you need the amplifier to be triggered by an envelope, and then you need the envelope to take its gate trigger every time you press a button on the keyboard. So you need a MIDI to CV converter that's going to take your MIDI, convert it to the control voltage that's going to trigger that. Now I can play a note, you know, so it's a little fun. That's why I do it all virtually, so that I can build something simple and save it, then I build on it later. Yeah, so I love synthesizing sounds, and I'll really enjoy those days when I just sort of set myself a small challenge to make something really pretty, or to make something really gnarly, or look at someone else's patch idea on YouTube and see if I can do that, and then take it in a new direction, and then save all that shit and save it to either the Ableton's built-in thing. So like, here's one of the legend patches that I've saved. Mellow lead. Here's like a Serum-esque synth that I only use because it's got that cool granular oscillator like Rapid does. Ooh, I hope it doesn't crash it. It's a bit fucking, yeah. So, like, I've loaded a sample in there, and as you can see, it's sort of just playing tiny grains of that sample. Slow it right down, you can hear the grains. Yeah, so I'm not very good at atmospheric sounds at all, so that's where I am drawn to Rapid and that synth that was just up, because I'm new to sort of atmospheric sounds, and I need some really fucking sick tools to make it easier for me. I'm definitely not going to try and attempt it too much in the virtual modular plugins. I'll give it a crack, but yeah, Rapid is instant purchase for me for that reason when I saw what it can do. And now I've been playing around with it yesterday, and it's fucking insane. When I just for fun, like, show you what I was doing last night. Don't crash, behave. There we go. So, well, the granular elements, what was some of the really, like the chimes? Yeah, it was like, The FX type granular synthesis. So we want to, that's the shape of the grains. Random, more grains. Let me take it into this one. All direction. Chaos. No, detune I don't like. I want more length. Now let's get a little bit of reverb because the reverb sound so sick in here. Listen how pretty that is. I'm gonna just give me some boost. What the fuck? And then randomness. Oh, so gorgeous. Alright, now it's got the right parameters are set at the right spots. Let's just flick through some samples. I don't know what Chaos does yet. But you can get a fuck ton of grains. You can go up to 100. Quite atonal, but I dig it. Anyway, let's leave on another sample. Okay. I like the ones that's the samples that are sort of like just random bound nature, yeah, shit like that. So cool, just fucking, yeah. Clocking. Anyway, I was playing this for a good hour yesterday, just going, yeah. So that is basically my workflow. So like, yeah, if I was, one last thing I'll show you is that I haven't decided is, I have all these just audio samples, you know, if I was to look that up, it's all just like in a Finder folder, just WAV files. I am tempted to maybe use these clip files, and I'll explain why. For audio, I don't know what the benefit is really. The only thing is that these clip files, there's some couple of percussion that I've saved. What a clip file will do is it'll save not only the content of the clip, it could be MIDI as well, but it'll also save all of the effects that are on it. This one had no effects, but like I have some, I've got some synth ones here, so I'll whip out the OBX and hopefully it won't crash because fucking Arturia plugins don't like my computer. So that worked. So as you can see, it's got the plugin, and if I had EQ and effects after there, those would come in as well. This is my songwriting process now. So hi-hats, these are fucking not really using this plugin for hats anymore, but it was kind of a cool. And now I don't have any low elements, so like I did before, boom. And that low is not in tune with it, but whatever. So I can shorter. Don't like that. So I'll look for something else high. Just quickly. What about that? No, that's the same one. Not the one I was looking for. yeah, there's a good example. This guy came in with an effect already. Cool, There we go. Idea. Now I ask myself, do I like it? Is it interesting? Is it catchy? Is there some call and response? Do I keep singing it when I go off and make my lunch? If not, delete, you know? And to be honest, the song that I uploaded to SoundCloud was not catchy. I don't think it's great. I give myself like a C for that. Working towards giving myself an A+. But I've just decided now that when the song gets the green light for me, even if it's only a C+ or a B- or whatever, I take it all the way to the end, because it's no surprise that I'm actually not well practiced and good at the back end of the project, like the arranging and the mixing. It's like, wow, I need practice at this. So, I mean, if I'm not finishing other people's tracks, I better be finishing my own. That's sort of the only material I got to work with. So, going into this next round of tracks, well, maybe it's only one track that I'll write next, but that's the process, the 3-stage process. So I'm currently back in like gathering sounds, making sounds that really tickle my ears, really bring an emotional response to me on their own, in isolation. And once I've cataloged them librarian style, which I'm doing at the same time, then they're kind of the same process, obviously. Ooh, cool sound. Save it. Ooh, fuck, that's pretty sick. Save it. Make sure I can find it later because it's got the name there. So when I feel like I've been doing that for a good while, and I've got some sounds that I've sort of earmarked for, like, definitely want to try and use that in the next track. Like, that's a standout feature. That's like a synth sound that could lead an entire song, with the right melody behind it. And then I'm confident that I've got all the other supporting elements that are solid, like the low, the high percussion, the atmospherics, the even the dirt. I bought a sample pack from Ramper. That's right, Ramper's all this KMWBR is a sample pack Ramper put out. Basically, just chopped up all the songs that he just put out in the last year and turn them into samples. You'll see like some of the names are even there, like Fluke, Dirt, Fluke. Can't really hear that, but if I turn it up, it's just kind of vinyl noise, just like. Sorry, which gives really otherwise sterile sounding tracks this feeling like they exist in the real world. It's like recording a band. There's all kinds of noise and shit in the background. It's like, oh, you feel like you're in a room with a band at a show, which is cool. So I like how Ramper takes those weird street sounds and nature sounds and whatever and puts them into his tracks. I've definitely started doing that as well. Yeah, and then, like I said, the assembly process then is quite quick. When I'm at my best, like I can have a song basically finished in a day. I put those elements in. I very quickly, once I'm committed, I start arranging straight away. The sounds still need a little bit of refinement. If it's audio, they'll need some EQing, compression maybe, and other things, some stereo widening maybe, but I might do that later when I mix. But basically it's rough sounding. It's not ready for the club yet, but I'll just arrange quickly because I am not really good at it, like I said yet. A lot of like cool stuff can come out in the arrangement where you can like really surprise people because it's only 3 bars and then it kicks in instead of 4 or 8. So arrange really quick, should only take me a day, and then I'll come back to that arrangement every day and I'll make little changes. I'll be like, nah, cut that out, bring that in quicker, make that go for longer. And then I will start adding, you know, I've got the really meat and potatoes parts that I've, these 3 elements sorted. But then there is also the bits that add to the arrangement, like build-ups and breakdowns and stuff like that. And I'll spend a lot of time whilst I'm tweaking the arrangement, adding those bits in, the effects, which you might see as a category in Splice, effects. And then when I'm really happy with the arrangement and there's no more changes I want to make, boom, time to mix. And, you know, we will talk about mixing in another video, but I hope that helped you, Hoji. And I'll do this again, you know, at some point down the track when I feel like I've got something new to share with you. I hope that was helpful, bud, and lots of love.